Dee 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 dee. Keto living is the life for me. Coffee, cooking, and recipes. Spending my days with my doggies. So be a sport. Set your alarm for Wednesdays for the Warden's Report. Hi, y'all. Normally, this would be the Warden's Report, and it kind of is. I was told by several great people that I need to share my story. I do have my full story, but it's like over 2.5 hours. So this is going to be me telling you my story from how I was on my deathbed and where I am today. Obviously, I'm alive, right? So what had happened? How did I become keto? So 4 years ago, a little over 4 now, we were on a very long trip, and I suddenly started feeling bad. We were actually on a cruise, and I suddenly started feeling bad, and I thought was a boil. And you know, a lot of times when you're overweight, you get these boils. It was in the bikini line, and I thought, okay, that's fine. It should go away in a couple days. And it was just getting progressively worse. So by like day 2, it really was hurting so bad that I actually thought, okay, if I pop it, maybe, you know, that'll relieve it. And no, it didn't. So after that, what I did is I was like, it's getting really bad, and it doesn't smell good, right? So I asked Heath to take a look at it, and he told me right then it's black. And I was like, oh no, that's not a good sign, right? Like, if anything turns black, you better go right there to see a doctor. So I went down to the infirmary on the cruise ship and had them look, and within minutes the doctor said, I've got to call headquarters. I'll be right back. She comes back after a few minutes, and she goes, so we're coordinating with the Coast Guard. We were in between stops. We had 2 days until the next port. She goes, we're coordinating with local authorities, local Coast Guard, to find what is the closest port that they could get you that has the closest hospital. And me being silly, I was like, but just lance it, right? Can't you just lance this? Because someone else on this cruise, because it was a really long cruise, someone else on the cruise had gotten like an infection in their finger, and they just lanced it. So I was thinking the same thing, like, can you just lance it? And she's like, no, you have necrotizing fasciitis. And I was like, okay, layman's terms. And she goes, basically, you have a flesh-eating bacteria. She goes, we cannot handle that on this cruise ship. You need actual surgery. And I was like, no, come on. So they worked with the Coast Guard, and they came and ended up, I had to jump from the cruise ship to a boat with the Coast Guard. And when I say jump, basically they put down the emergency plank, and the Coast Guard, one of them came on the plank with me, of course, put life jacket on me and everything, and I had to wait for the waves to come up. And once it came up, he was like, okay, go. And I had to literally jump from the plank into the Coast Guard boat. So that was very scary. Like, I get scared just to do a normal tender where you're just walking across, but it still scares me. So this was like very frightening. Because it was the Coast Guard, I of course was with Heath. He could not get off with me. They only had room for me. You know, it's an emergency situation. So Heath had to stay on the cruise until they reached the next port 2 days later. And then he'd be able to, they would coordinate to work him. So this is why I always tell people, always get the insurance on a cruise, because you never know. Like, I was like, we don't need to get this insurance. It was a little pricey because it was such a long cruise. And we went ahead and did it. And I'm so glad, because this would have cost us tens of thousands of dollars. But the cruise company, the cruise insurance company handled everything. They were amazing. So by the time I went to the infirmary on the cruise ship and I'm in the hospital, within 6 hours, I am on an operating table. They they were like, you got to go now. And I had been feeling pretty bad for a couple days at that point at the hospital. And this was in New Zealand. They roll me into the operating room and they do an operation and remove everything out of there. And then that night, I remember being in the ICU and I kind of woke up. Mind you, I'm all by myself in a foreign country. There's nobody with me. I'm all by myself. I kind of remember waking up after surgery a little bit and I was still feeling awful. Things were going and I hear beeping constantly. Nurses keep coming in and doing things. And finally this doctor came in and he's like, hey, I just want to talk to you. He's like, we're noticing your organs are shutting down and your body's going into shock. And I remember asking him, I was like, am I going to die? And he looked at me and he said, we're going to do everything we can to prevent that. So what I'm going to need to do is give you some Valium so that we calm you down. And if we calm you down, then that will help your body relax so that it stops going into shock. So that was what I remembered. The next day, then I woke up and they were like, okay, now you made it through the rough part, so your chances of survival are a lot higher. The doctors and staff came in, they talked to me, they said they had to cut, so this was in my bikini region, they had to cut a hole that was like, show this, it was like this big, y'all. Like, look how it is over my face. That's how big the hole was in my bikini region that they had to cut out to ensure that they got all of the flesh-eating bacteria out. So I had this gaping hole. They're talking to me and they, informed me, flesh-eating bacteria, like 66% of the people who get it actually don't survive. They were like, you're very fortunate that you made it because you were hours of dying. Like, if I had waited one more day, I would have been dead the next day on the cruise ship. So it was a lot to take in. Later that same day, a younger doctor came in and he sat with me and he was like, do you know why you almost died from this? And I was like, because I'm unlucky. And he was like, he goes, no, you are a severe diabetic. They took my A1C. Now, of course, they had to translate it to American numbers for me, but he's like, your A1C is 13.6. He's like, your diabetes is so uncontrollable that your body is so busy fighting itself with this diabetes that it can't fight anything else. He said, so something like this that a healthy person would have more likely fought it off, it wouldn't have gotten to this point. Your body can't do it because the diabetes, that's when you're a diabetic, it is truly your body is battling itself. So he was like, you're harming yourself not only by being a diabetic, but it puts you at such a higher risk for anything else because your body can't fight two wars at once. It's one. So you pick the battle, right? And the thing he did that really changed everything for me, because I knew I was a diabetic and I was not treating it. I was like, I don't like needles. I'm not going to do that to myself. I'm not going to put insulin in myself. So I just was like, you know what? You live once. I already put up and I saw what my stepdad went through and I was like, I'm just not going to go through that. So if you just ignore it, it goes away, right? So he was like, he looked at me right in my eyes and he said, so what are you going to do about it? And it seems like such a statement that's so logical and like everybody, duh, of course you have to do it. But I had never looked at it like that. Every time I'd gone to doctors, they would just say, here, I'm going to write you a prescription. Here's some insulin to take. You should do this. You need to do blah, 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 blah. And I guess I'm just not a person that likes to take orders. I wonder why I'm called the warden, right? And so I never, you know, it just didn't matter. But when he looked at me and told me, what are you going to do about it? I was like, that's right. I have control of what I'm going to do. This is my battle, and I choose what I want to do. So I had kind of heard of keto, and that's when I just looked at him and I said, well, I guess I need to cut sugars out. And he was like, yeah, he got so excited. And he goes, what else? And I said, well, I guess kind of avoid the starchy vegetables. He's like, yeah, that's right. That's right. And I said, man, you know, I guess eat more leafy greens. He goes, perfect. What else? And I said, I guess, you know, have, you know, good healthy proteins. And he was like, exactly. He said, do that. So he basically told me to go keto without saying go keto. Just making that. And I was like, okay. After I talked to him, I got on my laptop because at least I got to bring that. And I immediately put in YouTube, can you reverse diabetes type 2? And Dr. Ken Berry's video came up. And that's who I started watching. And I was like, so it is reversible. Because every doctor I'd ever seen told me, no, once you're a diabetic, it's just downhill from here. And that's when I learned it can be reversed. So if you're watching this and you have diabetes, you can reverse it. I'm a living example of it. So, sorry, y'all. 4 years later, and I still get emotional. So immediately I started taking, you know, like the tips that what I just said to do and listening to Dr. Berry. And I just started binging his videos. And in the hospital, in ICU, and then when they moved me to a room, I started just doing, when they would bring me the menu, I would cross out the starch vegetable and I would say, give me double protein or give me double of the, it was like, they call it silver leaf, basically collard greens. And this is proof that even if you're in the hospital, you could still be keto. You could still do low carb because that's what I did. I started that in the hospital. I never selected the desserts. I avoided those. I'd have, of course, my coffee. You gotta have coffee and tea. And then I was just learning. Like, I didn't know put butter and everything. I was just like, okay, cut out the sugar and don't have any desserts. You know, don't have sodas. Don't have these starchy vegetables. And I started doing that. Like for breakfast, most of their breakfast is cereal, like kind of like here, but they would have a plain yogurt. So I would just have that 1 cup of plain yogurt every day for my breakfast. And that's what I started doing right then. A couple days later, finally Heath caught up with me. And during this time, so about 3 days is how long it ended up taking them to get to me, I have been binging Dr. Berry's videos. And I was like, you know what? We're going to have to do this keto. We're going to have to do it, but I can't do it alone. And I knew I had Heath at that moment. And when he came in, because he almost lost me. And he was very emotional and very upset, thinking that he almost lost his wife, the love of his life. So he sat down and I said, look, I'm going to tell you something. You're going to have to do something with me because I can't do this alone. And he's like, oh, of course, anything. And I said, you're going to have to go keto with me. And he's like, oh, okay, what is that? And so I explained to him, cut out the sugars, the starchy veggies. And he's like, but I love pizza and all that. And I said, look, if we continue on the way that we're eating, because we were just eating whatever we wanted, then I could die again. So this is the option. And you have to do it with me. Like, there's no choice here. And he said, okay, yeah, I don't want to ever lose you again. He said, so I'll do it. And I started keto, and right there in the hospital. By day 8 in the hospital, whenever they would take my blood sugar, after every meal, every time I ate, they had to take my blood sugar, and then they would pump me with insulin to get my blood sugar lower. By day 8 in the hospital, they took it, and they were like, even the nurse was astonished. She goes, oh, we don't have to give you insulin. Yeah, your blood sugars didn't spike. And I knew right then, I was like, day 8, eating hospital food, doing the bare basic keto. I didn't need insulin. And I knew right then, this is it. This is what's going to do it. And I came, back to the States after 10 days there. Came back to the States and remained keto. On the airplane, I stayed keto. When they served, I was like a burger I could order on the airplane. I took the bun off and I just ate the meat and veggies. Doing those simple things, and as you learn, as I learned more, I made the choice, like adding more butter to my food and butter to my coffee, and getting rid of the seed oils. Those things came later, but right there at the beginning, I did the basics. So this is letting you know you don't have to be perfect in the beginning. Just do the basics. By following that, I had to follow it with a surgeon because I had this gaping hole, right? They couldn't just sew it up. It had to be an open wound that would slowly heal. They said normally that takes 3 to 4 months to heal. This happened February 13th, right before Valentine's. So I didn't get to have Valentine's with Heath that year. So he had to make it up later. But when I came back, they said normally 3 months. By April, so a little over 2 months later, the surgeon wrote, he discharged, said, you're healed now. Your wound has healed. And he was shocked at how quickly my wound healed and how great I was doing. And every week for a while, I was having to go every week, then every 2 weeks. When I was followed up with him, every time I was just losing weight, right? But what I was more concerned with is, hey, how fast, how is this going to heal properly? Especially if you've been a bad diabetic. They always say, when you're a diabetic, you heal horribly. He was shocked. And one of the main things I think that really helped, not only being keto, but I focused heavily on eating high-fat plain yogurts. I would get the Fage 5% yogurt, and I would have at least a cup of that every single day. I think all of the bacteria that's in that and the protein and the fat really helped my body to heal, and not having sugar. That prevents your body from healing. So I not only healed quickly, from that, I reversed my diabetes down. So I started with 13.6 in February. Within 3 months, my A1C was 5.4. Completely reversed my diabetes. I went from that high number to there. When I forced him to be keto, his A1C, I think, was only a 7 when he started. So he wasn't as bad as me. He reversed his within 6 weeks. So it is possible. If you're someone that has diabetes and you think that it's permanent, it is possible. You can do it. Especially for type 2. So that's my story. I almost died. And now look at me. I feel like I'm thriving. Am I still overweight? Yeah, I'm still overweight. But my body's been so focused on healing not only all the damage that occurred from being a diabetic for years. I know I was a diabetic for years, especially with that high a number. I also had ulcerative colitis. That's similar to Crohn's. It's a colon inflammation, and I was hospitalized several times a year with ulcerative colitis. I used to have to get colonoscopies at least 3 a year. Basically, every quarter, the doctor was doing a colonoscopy on me. I was in the hospital sometimes every other month. Like, I was miserable. Every time I ate, I was sick. Everything I ate made me sick. Of course, I had horrible indigestion. I was on the purple pill. I know I had fatty liver. I also had PCOS. I had a lot of health issues, but if you met me, I didn't act like I did because I was just like, that's just life, right? So after all that, in 4 years, not only did I reverse my diabetes, I no longer have a fatty liver. I have not had any flare-ups with my ulcerative colitis in 4 years. Ever since I went keto, I have not had any of those issues. I have not been hospitalized with my ulcerative colitis. I have felt amazing. Like, I feel like truly my gut is nearly healed. Like, it's amazing. It was just awful. Restroom all the time. If you have it, comment down below. But let's just say I was in the restroom 12 to 15 times a day, every day. I haven't had that. Haven't had the pain where I just want to bawl my eyes out and have to have pain medication because it hurts so bad. None of that. And then my indigestion, my heartburn, gone. Like, I remember watching a video of someone, and they were like, okay, you know, their indigestion. And I was like, because I was still taking the purple pill. I was like, well, I'm still taking the purple pill. What if I just stop it? Let's see what happens. And I stopped it, y'all. I was like, oh, I don't have indigestion anymore. My heartburn's gone away. I was just amazed. So if you're new here, hit that subscribe, give a thumbs up, share this, y'all. If you know somebody, a family member, a friend who has these chronic conditions and they're like, oh, I have to take insulin. I'm just stuck here. Let them know it's possible. You can go from nearly dying with 13.6 A1C to now reversing that. If I could do it, anyone can do it. Please help get that message out there that keto can heal and help people. Don't let them think that they are stuck with whatever disease that they have for the rest of their life, that it is treatable. Please share this story. Get the word out there. Thank you all so much for watching and hearing my short version of my story. If you wanted to go see the whole thing, it's 2.5 hours on the main page of our YouTube channel. But I wanted to get this out here today just to give that quick story that you can listen to and share with your friends and family. Thank you all again for watching. Please stay tuned to see all of our wonderful channel members. Thank you all for your support, because it's actually our channel members that talked to me and said, you need to get this story out there. So that's what I'm doing today. Thank you all. Bye.